We should probably clear this.
Well, we're not streaming. That I don't see the point in that. So I will just upload this straight to YouTube. And
Straight to the tubs.
And we can keep it unlisted or whatever. I don't care. But it doesn't feel like something we're streaming. But we can get started anytime. I just have the full screen of the video itself. So I know that we have some stuff in Discord right now. We have the debriefing from yesterday. So Trey, just in case it wasn't clear, we have talked about this video, but we very much want to hear your perspective because that can serve two purposes. First, to validate what we saw about the performance, and then second, to check what we missed, because I'm sure that you'll have a different perspective of it.
Yeah.
So, in terms of our objectives for the session today, first, I want to make sure you don't have to stay up too late because I know you have to work tomorrow. So feel free to take the wheel when we get going, and when you gotta go, just let us know so we can stop anytime.
Sure. I actually watched this all the way through once.
Oh, yay!
Yay. So I am not unaware of, well, I shouldn't say all the way. I watched the first round all the way through, skipped through the second round, and then I watched the last one.
Okay.
So
we're ready.
I know you guys are probably interested in your last attack. So
yes.
Things to talk about there. So
cool.
We can do that first, or we can do it last, however you want to.
Well, just in general, I put my objectives in the channel just to identify critical opportunities in which we did one thing but could have done an equally valid thing. I know you're really good about spotting that stuff. Specifically identifying positioning errors, super helpful for me.
Okay.
Any composition affordances and limitations that we haven't already noted. And then any basics, because I have to put that there given our meta discussion about basics. I want to know what they are, because I know I'm fucking up, and I can do better.
I mean, yeah. The thing about basics, especially in Overwatch, is that they are never really basic. Every character only has, max 4 or 5 abilities, and it's really just how you use those. And really what determines how you use those is, your team, their team, where you are, where they are. And those are the 4 things you got to think about.
Okay. Well, I'm going to just turn the wheel over to you, so we'll go wherever you want to go, especially since you have an idea of what's going on in this hot mess of a match. So,
okay.
Take it away.
I just wanted to talk about this one really quick. I don't have the audio on, do I?
I think we have to individually toggle the audio. Again, you've probably figured out.
Quiet.
It's quiet. It's also fucked up.
One tick.
Yeah.
It only recorded mine for some reason.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Yep.
So.
I think that we need to be careful because if we all go to the point, someone's gonna get left behind.
I don't know how to toggle.
Oh, weird.
Interesting. Iris got much louder on my screen. Hang on.
So I'm playing with the audio down at the bottom, but I don't know if that's
It was
affecting
weird.
your audio.
It was weird because I had the audio all the way up, and I heard your audio when I was tapped out, so I thought you were talking. You're like, we need to be careful. I'm like, why do you need to be careful? It's just a bother you.
Right. So I don't know. I'm gonna mute it for now, I guess.
Yeah.
Just so that we can talk about things and kind of let it go without being interrupted. So is the video paused for everyone right now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Is it universally controlled? Okay. Blah, 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 blah. So when I was watching this earlier today, the first thing I noted, I think you pushed tab here in a second. Hang on.
I did try to tab.
Now that I can hear it, we're going to use the audio.
Well, you haven't tabbed.
Well, I haven't tabbed yet because it hasn't been 15 seconds.
Right. That's not my point, but hang on. Let me back up for a second.
The hot mistakes here.
My point is that, there are 4 major things when you're thinking about, when you want to use an ability or, when you want to try to do an ultimate, where you want to position. The 4 things you want to think about, and I already kind of mentioned them, are what your team composition is, where your team is, what their composition is, and where their team is. And all of those 4 things are really going to, break down into, a thought process tree in deciding, when a decision is good or like when a decision is bad or like when something is executed well or executed poorly. So you can already start thinking about those things before your match starts. So I looked at this today, and you guys are running Far Mercy, you guys are running Winston, you're running Junkrat, you're running Lucio, and then what is your other tank that you're running? Diva. Okay, and that's fine. So this composition is fine, but as soon as you pick this composition, you should be thinking, okay, what is our general mode of action? It's probably Winston jumps on something, Diva kind of protects him and or peels for a support that might be vulnerable, which won't be as much of a case in this instance because both your supports should be pretty mobile. And your win condition is kind of getting Monkey on top of people and getting Pharah an angle to deal a lot of damage. And that's kind of what you're trying to get. But you also have to recognize immediately as a tank player in this instance, which 2 of you people on your team are playing as tanks, that your Pharah requires a lot of support, especially if they have any hit scan, and that's going to be your Mercy's main priority. So with Lucio as your second healer, you're going to be afforded speed, and so you can use that to your advantage. But if you had taken like an Ana as a secondary healer, you might have more healing for your tanks. So just looking at this already, you should know as a Winston or as a Diva, your job isn't really going to be to stay in the fight and secure kills, because if you do, you're probably going to die. It is to buy time for your Pharah to set up and give her the space that she needs to get kills. And or your Junkrat. So that's just something you can think about as you're going into this. Like, I'm not going to have a ton of healing. If I'm getting a ton of healing from our Mercy, which Mercy doesn't even really output that much, especially against the comp that you're getting ready to play against, not enough to stay in the fight for sure. That you should know that you're not going to get a ton of healing. If you are getting a ton of healing, your Pharah is probably going to die. And you need both of those pieces, really, especially at a higher level of play, to really make what you're trying to do work. You need your tanks alive to buy the space. You need your Pharah alive to deal the damage. And so kind of accepting that strategy, you should just be ready not to get a lot of healing as a tank with this composition.
So basically anytime, I know that every time I jumped in this particular, it was all fucked up. All of my jumps were fucked. But in any case, like using jump near the choke, bad.
It is bad.
Because I can't get anywhere and to like not die. I basically am a flying fat target, and the Bastion kills me, and then I hit the ground. Where I was planning to land. So okay.
So we'll talk about some things. We're going to talk about kind of compositions and heroes as a tool, like in this game, and I'll get to it in a second. We'll let it run for a second here. In this game, there's always a problem. You have an objective to protect, or you have an objective to take from opponents. That's your problem. And your characters are kind of tools. They are the tools in your toolkit. So you should think of all of their abilities as like, what are the tools that we're going to use to solve this problem? And as with tools in real life, some tools are better suited for a job. Doesn't mean it's impossible to accomplish the task that you need to with the tools that you already have, but obviously it would be better to switch compositions sometimes just to give you more opportunities to solve the problem or just make it easier in general. So, you guys notice there's a Bastion, they got a Hog, they've got Mercy and Baptiste kind of running in the back here. The Mercy and the Baptiste, especially with this lamp, should kind of tip you off immediately that your tanks aren't going to be the ones securing kills again in this instance. If they were running maybe an Ana in the far back and you were also running an Ana, then your Monkey could be in there securing kills because he could cut off her healing with your bubble, and that might be a win condition for you guys, but it's not in this instance. Like, your Monkey isn't going to be able to survive for more than half a second in their team, especially with Hog and Bastion.
Yeah.
They chose to run kind of an inferior version of it with the Reinhardt instead of the Orisa, which means that you can play corners slightly more aggressively because there's no threat of being pulled around them. So that's good for you guys. So with the tools that you guys have, just to give you an example of what you would be trying to do, there is a win condition here that you could identify and try to play toward. And as soon as you kind of look through the choke, I'll try to draw it up for you. It was just one that I thought of. So right now, you definitely don't want to be poking. Your Pharah decides to do it anyway. Ends up dying.
We told her, no, Pete,
Yeah.
stop with the trickling.
Right.
She chose that moment to shut off her fucking brain.
Right. We talked about earlier, your win condition is kind of smoke screen with your tanks so that your damage dealers can get in there and blow everything up. And it's easier to do that with Farah against what they have, but it's still possible with Junk, though it'll take a little longer for him to approach. So it's going to be a little more difficult, but perfect scenario. You all manage to get in there. Both your damage dealers are like in their team actively doing damage, which requires pretty good timing and execution on their part. And then you probably win the fight based off of that if all 6 of you are kind of alive inside their team doing stuff. And I'm still waiting for you to look at the choke before I can give you a description of kind of what I was seeing. Okay, so this is good enough. So one way that you can do this that I thought about is you have your Junk play kind of at choke.
It's not pause.
Yeah, it didn't pause for me either.
Wait, what? Interesting.
Oh, weird.
Is it
it's
paused?
For me.
It's not paused for me. It's still playing.
Yeah, same. Wow. Oh wait, hang on. I'll push the sync button. There we go. Oh. Perfect.
Interesting. There's this sync.
Just desynced.
Okay. Iris, do you see the top left sync button?
Looks like a refresh icon. It's overlaid onto the video.
Aha.
Ah.
Yes. Okay. It appears synced.
Okay.
Yay.
So this is fine. Oh, no, stop playing. Okay, this is fine. So one way that you guys could accomplish this with this established win condition with the tools / characters that you have is that you could use your initial resources to communicate your Farah and your Mercy go left. And I'm just going to kind of blow through this one way that you could have solved this problem really quick. So if your Farah and your Mercy go left, and I believe the Roadhog stays on the right here, which is great for you because he's the one character that could stop this from working if you are actually up here where he should be. If your Farah and your Mercy get in on the left side, there are these windows up top here that you can fly around to the second point where there's this little mega back here and there's this Widow high ground right here, whatever, that you can kind of float around on the walk to the second point. Because they haven't chosen the Orisa variant, they can't pull the Farah and the Mercy around corners to get the hook combo or to get the Bastion to melt them down. When you look at their composition, they basically have this very high pressure zone of damage that is this probably to the fountain on the point, big circle right at this choke, where if they can see you, they're going to deal a lot of damage all at once, more damage than you're going to be able to heal through, and more damage than your team does even.
Yeah.
So because they don't have Orisa, they don't have any mobile characters, and the Roadhog is playing in a poor position, you could easily get your Farah and your Mercy in this back area, and they could either sit there until you guys are ready to engage, or they could actually sit on this Widow high ground and poke in high damage rockets onto the Bastion, probably baiting out Vap's ult or his lamp, and just dealing a ton of damage. And because you exist back there, not even necessarily getting kills, because you exist back there, and the weakness of their comp that they have here is its mobility, and they will not be able to chase you down or pull you out of cover. As long as you exist back there as Farah and Mercy, and you just shoot rockets every once in a while, you're going to be splitting their attention. And doing that could, in the best case scenario, reduce the damage being thrown straight at this choke by, up to 50%, because Bastion's going to have to keep turning around and unturreting and moving around, and it's going to buy the rest of your team a lot of space. So in this instance, your DPS support combo is going to buy space for your tanks to give you the smoke screen, therefore then buying your damage dealers space back. So you're trading kind of space for each other in this instance. And you'll always want to be looking for a setup like this against low mobility comps, which they have, and comps that can't really abuse positioning, so they don't have like a ball and chain combo with an Orisa and a Hog. Basically anything with short sightlines and low mobility, you're going to want to try to take angles around it and force them to panic and try to move around and not know who to focus on, if that makes sense. So as soon as and you have to bring the Mercy, which seems kind of strange, like maybe we don't want to dedicate our main healer to just one character in the backline. In this instance, no amount of healing is going to save any of you because of how much damage they're going to output. So it's perfectly fine to dedicate your main healer to this cause because the distraction itself is actually going to provide you more healing than any one healer could in the first place. Or I guess provide you less damage would be the better way to phrase that.
That's damage mitigation, yeah.
Yeah. And so the Fire Mercy back there is going to apply a ton of pressure to them. And as soon as, maybe the fire calls it, maybe the monkey is poking at choke and kind of looking, as soon as you guys notice that maybe they're distracted, or Far could even throw a concussive on this mid ground here and probably knock Reinhardt off. As soon as you guys see an opportunity like that, especially if Batiste has used his lamp already, then you guys can just dive in onto this high ground. As your tank, you'll want to make sure that D.Va goes first against high damage compositions, especially Bastion, so that she can DM all the way while she's flying up to the Bastion. If your monkey goes in first, he's going to get shredded before he even gets there. And the monkey's going to want to follow behind your D.Va in like a half second, probably less than a half second's time space. So it's like D.Va flies in, drill, monkey jumps in, boom, that fast.
Okay.
You land on the Bastion. He is the number one priority in this composition. Hog has bad positioning. You could probably block his hook with a bubble after you dive in. Once you kill the Bastion, you're going to want to try to maintain this space so that Mercy can't get the res on the Bastion. And then honestly, without their Bastion, this comp just crumbles because they have no range. The only thing that could threaten killing you at that point is basically their Hog. So yeah, that is one way to accomplish this with your tools. As soon as Farah gives you some space, your tanks dive in, your Junkrat can try to walk in past the Roadhog, and then also get up here and deal damage, and then you're probably good to go. I wouldn't expect this particular team to rotate properly in response to your Farah, but it's possible that they would, and a good place for them to rotate might be the interior right here next to the point, which might make it tough for you guys. But honestly, I don't think there is a good place for them to rotate once your Farah has healing and is in their backline. Because even if they rotate to that interior area, the Farah gets to sit on top of this high ground and just challenge anyone who comes out onto the point. They'd have to be very coordinated to make sure that nothing goes wrong when they try to recontest the point. So I think that's one way that you guys could have won it with the tools that they'd have, or that you do have. I think maybe a harder way to win this particular fight, but would probably be more surefire even, would be, say, if you ran a Reinhardt and a D.Va and a Lucio, something kind of like Goats, but you can swap a few characters. Reinhardt and D.Va and Lucio are probably the three major character key components that you're going to need. There are three things that you could do with a composition like that. And you'll just want to make sure that you have some high damage character to really capitalize on the position that you'd buy yourself. One, you could, with Reinhardt and D.Va, you could either just collapse on Roadhog, especially if you have an Ana as your healer, to sleep and or purple him, kill him, just get that out of the way really quick. The D.Va should be able to DM Bastion long enough for you guys to take care of that. And that's just kind of as an aside. The major win condition with that composition would be to run through main and occupy the interior place next to point, thereby forcing the Bastion to come to you. If you guys do your rotations properly, you could have your supports in the back stairwell here, and effectively what you've done is kind of flipped the attack and the defense here. So you would act like you're defending the point against a Bastion instead of trying to attack into a Bastion, which is almost always a favorable condition because Bastion is so slow. And so if you have your Reinhardt playing this corner back here on the interior with his shield every once in a while, if things get dicey, and you kind of have your supports touching the point back here, and then you stay on the interior with your high damage output character and just focus on whoever contests the point and just kind of ignore the Bastion unless he presents an obvious opportunity to kill him, that's a major win condition for you guys in this instance. Another instance of that would be instead rotate to the right, which would be fine for you guys. This could be particularly effective if you had a Reaper that you kind of, I wouldn't expect a lower ranked, probably gold team to notice this. If you ran a Reaper and you all rotated in on the right side and you just kind of left your Reaper in this room, I doubt they would notice that he didn't follow you guys. You guys rotate up here to point and then drop down on point, and then the second you do that, your Reaper teleports up onto this high ground. He's probably going to get a ton of value and deal a ton of damage, and that'll win you the fight. But that's just another example of taking the point from them and forcing them to come to you. The third option, which would also probably work, especially if you're running Goats, is just run all the way left side and fight them exactly where they are. And Goats, or especially a D.Va, is necessary to do this. just because the damage mitigation from the Bastion will afford you enough time to probably melt him and melt the lamp. But that is, I don't know, it's not higher risk, but it requires better execution as far as everyone's damage mitigation abilities go. So those are all possible solutions. As a team, you'll kind of have to think about which ones sound more plausible for you guys. It's just important to think about kind of what they have and what that means for your strategy, because things that you may not have thought about, obviously are like, healing is incredibly important against a power boosted Bastion. What you really want is to take position, like to abuse their range and abuse their mobility and try to take different angles. With a high damage Pharah, it's especially useful if you can protect her from poke with your Mercy, because she's probably not needed anyway. And you definitely don't want your tanks to be securing kills, but instead buying space for your high damage DPS, which means that you're going to have to execute sort of the monkey jump Pharah in position combo in like a half-second window. So just all that was what I thought when I watched this the first time at lunch today. Mm-hmm. And there are, obviously you guys could have more questions about this particular attack. The particular like monkey jumping Pharah shooting rockets I saw in earlier rounds when Valkyrie was playing Pharah, and I thought that was done very well in some instances, that you guys were coordinated with nice target focus. So I think it's possible for your team. Obviously you have a rando playing Pharah in this particular round.
I could not fucking believe he took Pharah after like I had played her and done so well in the earlier rounds. Right? I was stunned. I was like,
she was so mad.
I was like, no. Fucked up, man. Like,
yeah.
Oh, hi, Chill.
One thing I should point out about this particular composition, I suppose, is that I know that at any rank really, I don't want to say just lower ranks, there can be a misconception that healers are always going to be your highest priority target. But in reality, the highest priority target is the one that is going to cause the most problems for you. And obviously sometimes tanks and healers are going to keep you from killing that target. But a lot of the time, if you can take a DPS pick, that's going to be the most impactful for your team. And especially in this instance, Bastion is your number one priority.
Mm-hmm.
And so the monkey in this instance, while he has his half second where he can zap Bastion with his gun, is effectively negating the healing that Mercy would do. So I would just ignore her until the Bastion's dead. Because if Monkey is actively zapping Bastion, I don't know the exact numbers, but it's almost the same amount as Mercy's healing.
Yeah.
So her healing will be negligible, and especially if Pharah timed it right and is bombarding Bastion with rockets, he's going to have to probably reposition. If he's a really good Bastion and is disciplined and knows he has a Batiste, then he probably will wait for Lamp, because they would have communicated this ahead of time, in which case you'll have to change focus. That may mean that you have to switch your Monkey out, or he'll die and your Diva takes Monkey's place, just to kind of keep up the distraction and keep the Bastion guessing as to who he should fire at. Target the Lamp, and then, if you're still alive at that point, focus the Bastion again after that. But that was just a general point, that a lot of the time DPS picks are more impactful than healing picks. And tank picks can be impactful depending on the situation.
I feel the brain cell.
You feel it.
I feel it.
Just one though.
Stretch it.
One collective brain cell.
Yeah.
So
this time is not synced. What?
Oh yeah, you have to push the button.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a thing.
The button.
The button.
In the top left corner.
Looks like a.
You'll see Monkey gaping.
Sync video with everyone else.
Oh shit! What the fuck? What? My everything just fucked up.
Oh no!
Oh no!
It just.
Oh no!
It like screenshotted something, and anyway, it died. But I'm syncing it again, getting it back.
You got that sinking feeling?
Oh my god.
Oh no.
Okay. I'm back.
What the fuck? Over?
This is where we tried to do something and then
Yeah, and
it's too late.
I feel like we've talked about taking divergent angles on bunker comps before, so it just...
We literally did. Well,
we saw
in this one, we were supposed to go. We were supposed to go right.
Yeah.
And then we did not. There was a confusion that happened.
Yeah. And I know I've said this a lot in the past to you, Iris, but obviously chokes are the most dangerous places as a tank, and I'm not saying that you didn't do this. Just for everyone else's sake, as a tank, you want to escort your team through the choke as fast as possible. You never want to stand in it, which a lot of people have problems with, even up to master's rank. It's just, they're like, okay, this is the place I poke at. And it's like, no, you should probably move through there instead of... I know it's scary that the enemy team kind of has control, a perceived control over the space beyond that choke, but you should probably just go through, because then you're at least distracting them. Whereas if you guys are all lined up at the choke, then they kind of just get to stare at your whole team for free and know exactly where you all are. Which, when there's a bastion, that's exactly what they want. They want you all to be kind of on the same plane of attack so that they don't have to turn around and worry about their own safety.
I'm just running my client really quick because I want to see like how much of a window I have as Sparrow to get through this choke before Bastion insta-ganks me.
Right. So that's another thing is that, obviously as Sparrow, you're going to
be... There's a couple different ways you can play it. So if you came from the left, it's like 1, 2, 3, and then you get...
Wait, I think it's not synced for me.
Concussion blaster there. Yeah, I'm actually in the game client right now, but I'm trying to imagine, like, Jesus, this thing is like tweaking the fuck out.
Right. So the reason that I said that your fire and your mercy should probably go left side is that, the typical, like, let's go left side doorway at the choke is really easy to get into. And once you're in there, the Bastion didn't have good sightlines on the room to the left. And you could just fly up through the window in that room. I was
trying to decide if it would be safer to come from the top right of the arch and then concussion blast in there, but I think that leaves Mercy exposed for too long. I think you have to go through the door in the bottom.
Right. Well, I think, so if you were just going to do it straight from the archway at choke, one, you're attacking on the same plane as your team that is in the choke too. So the Bastion will have, ready sights on you whenever you concussion blast in, and he can melt you down really quick. The second thing is that in order for that to work, it's going to rely on your tanks buying space for you instead of you buying space for them. And what going all the way left into that second point area affords your team is a different plane of attack to distract their team to buy space for your tanks so that then they can buy space for you. So that they can actually get in. So one of the problems with the specific Bastion comp is like, how are your tanks ever going to get in there and not get melted instantly? And that's one way to accomplish that. So it's not just about the FAR being in the right place. It's about everybody kind of working together and sequencing things properly so that you can meet the win condition requirements, which in this instance is kind of having your tanks on them and not dead and having your FAR on them and not dead. And one way to properly set that up is to go in the back left, buy space for your tanks, and then kind of trade off responsibility for that. Because just the Farah on him probably isn't enough, and just the Winston on him probably isn't enough. Like, it is theoretically possible that the Farah could just wait at choke, everyone waits at choke, Monkey jumps in, and you execute it fast enough to be also on top of them as Farah with a concussive blast. It's just harder.
Yeah, so and you can see at the literally the last second of the game, the Bastion can aim too because he took Iris out of the air like after she had gone 180 degrees over his head, basically.
Right. And as soon as Farah in the backline in that mega area can hit Bastion, which she can do from relative safety, so that's something you always want to think about too, is like risk versus reward. In the back left, there's not much risk the Bastion will kill you, especially if Mercy's with you, and you're getting a lot of reward in that you're distracting the Bastion. You're going to put damage on him. After a rocket or two, he's probably going to uproot, or Batista's going to use his lamp. Both of those is a win in this case. So there's a really large reward for minimal risk. Whereas if you try to set up in choke or near choke where he can see you and the rest of your team, then the reward is equally as important, but the risk is also much higher.
Is the video supposed to be paused right now?
I've just been letting whoever's controlling it control it. I have no idea who's moving it around.
Okay.
Alright, just wanted to check.
But just to reiterate a point is when you come out and you see their comp, you should always be trying to think about one way to come to a win condition to play to is to think about what weaknesses they have. And obviously we already talked about it. It's that they don't have a lot of range. If you could take long range because Farah has no damage fall off in a relatively safe position at a different angle than the rest of your team, then that's going to buy you a lot of things. A lot of damage, a lot of space for everyone else.
If only we didn't have somebody who was completely incompetent playing Pharaoh.
Right.
Randoms. I can't wait till we're a 6-stack again. I'm so excited for the future. And like the bummer thing is the randoms were very receptive initially. Like feedback and direction.
And then we collectively lost all our brain cells.
Yeah. One by one the brain cell changed hands until it fell on the floor. Yeah, and one thing, we went over this in our notes and we reviewed it ourselves, but like we really lost our planning discipline. By the last match, because this fucking match went so long. I think Iris said it's like almost 30 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's pretty long. Another thing to keep in mind is that, setting up one fight that is in your favor is going to be much more important than trying to take like 2 fights or 3 fights that really aren't cobbled together and are probably going to fail. Like maybe they work out, but for example, like I know you guys are feeling the pressure because there's 40 seconds left or whatever in that attack. It's going to take 10, maybe 15 seconds for your fire to establish properly if you go through with the plan that I said was a possibility. And I know that people kind of get itchy trigger fingers. They're like nervous. They're like, oh man, we only have 40 seconds.
We were totally calm, actually. That's the fucked up part about this. Like, you listen to Iris's comms in this. We were feeling super chill. Like, we were like, all right, we're gonna make a plan. We're not gonna go crazy. We just need to win one good fight. And then this fucking blueberries trickled, and I was like, now we're never gonna get to see like how we do. Like, we didn't even get an opportunity. It was super disappointing. I was I was very optimistic about that run.
Mm-hmm.
But we drew, yay!
Yeah, a draw is not bad. So,
it's better than the fucking L, that's for sure.
It is. Yes. Also, in scenarios where there's a little time left, if you don't think that you'll be able to win the fight or safely transition your team onto the point where you kind of control it and are forcing the enemy team to come to you within the time that you have left, it's important to communicate ahead of time who's going to trigger overtime so that you don't have multiple people scrambling out of position trying to accomplish the same task.
Yeah, I feel like it's never going to be me because I have a rotten sense of timing.
Yeah, a good
unfortunately
instance would probably be your Lucio or your Diva. He can speed on ahead, and it's going to buy you some distraction if he manages to make it in the back, and he's pretty survivable with healing of his own. Or your Diva can set up to do it. But that also means that you're taking kind of one component from your major strategy to just touch the point. So you don't want to, like, if you can avoid it, obviously you don't want to let it get to that scenario, but in too many games have been lost because no one touched the point.
Or everybody's just running in and dying at the same time.
Right.
That's everybody's also like, a plan, okay?
Gotta get to the point, and then one person goes in and touches and dies, and the next person goes in and touches and dies, and then rinse and repeat. So, I mean, we can go through other parts of this, and you guys can ask questions, and I can just make general comments. Probably won't go into a ton of detail unless it's something I think is pretty important, just because I have to go to bed at a reasonable time. So,
Okay.
10 or 10:30 will be the stopping point, and these can get pretty long in my experience. So I don't know who's controlling this right now, but
I am.
okay.
Ah.
I just wanted to get to the second round. What time does the second round start? Because they just folded us like a fucking card table.
Mhm.
This round. It was
This is
embarrassing.
really depressing. Yes.
Standard issue, Orisa defense point. We have a Orisa, we have a Hog, we have a Mercy.
Mm-hmm.
I got the Nay. And we had the Zen. I think we identified that as a potential area for improvement.
Yeah, BAP might be better, but kind of with the asterisk that you guys right now probably also just need longer range damage. So like they had the Bastion, which is somewhat long ranged, but with your composition with the Junkrat and the May, it's kind of banking on them jumping on top of you. Like you guys are very strong in the area that you, but you are not very strong in any area that you don't control.
Yeah, I think I thought they were going to go monkey here. I think that was my assumption. I was trying to counterpick.
Yeah.
Because that monkey was very irritating.
Space.
So one thing to note is that, you know, as always, I'm sure everyone knows this, you should play around your main tank. Going into the room was probably not a great idea if your team wasn't ready to do that. And then that Genji kind of accomplished exactly what he wanted. So, you know how I said that the Fire and the Mercy on your guys' attack could have caused distraction and like scrambling, positioning and whatnot. That Genji just touching the point kind of caused you guys to give up what you had, and then they caught you guys out on the rotation.
None of us ever stood behind the shield. Not even for 5 seconds.
Yeah. So in that instance, if they do have a flanker, and this could just be a comp issue, you'll want to designate kind of whose responsibility it is to go touch the point and check the flanker.
Well, we should have had generally the off tank is going to peel, right? Or if we had a mobile DPS, then the DPS would go get that fucker.
Yep.
Rather than there is a...
Right. So the thing about if you're going to run a Hog with this composition, it means that you are playing for ball and chain combo picks. Like your win condition on a defensive ball and chain comp is that you're going to get picks before the enemy team has time to set up and be a problem. So they need to be kind of early, they need to be preemptive, and you need to have good target focus with it. Obviously, you can get hooks if they're just presented for free, but the higher you get rank-wise, people have better positioning, and you're going to need the orb to kind of secure those kills.
Oh, okay.
And that is really the out that you're playing too. The fact that the Genji got in behind you guys on the first point and then their team was already on top of you means that you didn't really initiate soon enough. You definitely should have tried for a hook chain or a ball and chain combo as they were crossing through the choke. And then if that fails, you probably want to rotate away from the doorway and make them come out of the door because you have the Junkrat who can spam that. And you really want to abuse the like medium range that you guys do have. So if you think about your comp in this specific instance, think about Roadhog's hook length is probably how far away you want to be from your opponents. Like that's probably optimal. You don't really want them right on top of you, but close enough to you, close enough to the vest. So on the first point, if you guys rotate to the bridge and play behind your shield and really force them to come out of that room and engage on you instead of engaging on them, then that fight probably goes a lot better for you. Now, on an alternative, I like to run Orisa with D.Va. That's my personal preference, just because D.Va is much more versatile, can still somewhat capitalize on ball combos because she can burst into it with rockets and flight. She can also challenge people like the Genji on the point much more readily and return to high ground much more readily. And especially if you're running a Baptiste, she can use Defense Matrix on your own lamp, therefore buying you the whole duration of the lamp for you know, most scenarios, like maybe Monkey's lightning or Zarya's beam breaks the lamp anyway. But the DMing the lamp and identifying the lamp as your win condition in a fight as D.Va is really important. And so she still does a ton of damage to tanks. If they want to jump on you with a monkey, she can use her boosters to boop away a monkey or boop away a D.Va off of high ground. She just has a much more versatility than a Roadhog as far as like defensive capabilities go, mobility goes, and just usefulness goes. But when you are playing the Hog variant of this, you just have to recognize that you're playing for a very specific thing, and that is to get picks before they become an issue. Because Hog is much better at getting those picks, forcing people out of position. You just have to be very proactive about it. And you need to be communicating those combos, the ball and the chain.
Yeah, this kind of makes me think I should focus on playing off tank more, because like we're pretty good at that combo, the two of us, but like Nyx like hasn't played D.Va with us much, and so like we had this additional wrinkle of like we're trying to fill roles and things like that with the randos, and it's like we're not getting that familiarity that we need to like function efficiently.
Also, I need to do the same thing when I play off tank.
Because because we have 3 people who play off tank like regularly now.
Sure. I also am an off tank. Well, I play every tank, but
oh, nice.
I play off tank for my team mostly. But I guess I have generally the most experience on main tank. I just play every tank, so I would be well suited to answer those questions. I guess if you have any as to generally what you should be doing or what you should be thinking about, what you should be looking for, how to sequence your abilities properly, all that stuff. One thing that my coach told me about Orisa, for your sake, Iris, is that in an Orisa comp, the orb is probably the most important ability that you want to get value out of. And you really want to shoot every single one with intent to get a pick. And if you aren't getting picks with like half of your orbs, then it would probably be better suited to just play something else. But that's a very high rank, so there's much more room for leniency at the level you guys are playing at. And it doesn't mean that you can't play Orisa, obviously. It's just definitely something to think about. Every time you shoot one of those things off, you want to be thinking like, who's going to follow up on this? Like, Hog should be here. That doesn't mean spend like 3 seconds trying to talk about it, but just be aware and have confidence in them. Just like shoot it out, and you're like, I'm orbing at choke, or like I'm pulling at choke.
Oh, okay.
Somebody needs to follow up on this. It's like if you were playing Orisa right here, they obviously have their shield, but you could orb above their shield and probably pick their Zen if you also had a Hog right there.
They had 2 shield tanks here.
Yeah.
Budget cuts in the chat right now.
They were leapfrogging the monkey and the Orisa, so the monkey always had a safe place to jump back to. It was really maddening. Yeah. We've never seen that in an enemy team before.
Yeah, I haven't played
very well
against Monkey and Orisa a ton. Our team runs it on Paris defense when we play Paris, just for first point, and we basically use our Monkey as a Sombra scouter, because Sombra is a major weakness for bunker compositions, so we literally just hold the Monkey in chokes and have him zap around to try to find the Sombra. So that she can't get EMP. So, with that strategy, we recognize like what our lose condition is. We definitely don't want to get EMP'd and like barraged or something like that. So we want to stall as much time off the clock before an EMP happens. We usually limit the Sombra to like 1 EMP roughly per 4 minutes on our defense, which is kind of what we're going for. If we survive that 1 EMP, great. We took away their biggest win condition. If we lose, swap on second point, like GG, go next point. But that is one strategy that we run. In general, it's probably not the best tank composition. One thing that obviously it creates an issue with is the massive amount of barriers. I think, how much health is Orisa barrier? Is it 900 too?
Yep.
So Monkey's is 900 also, or is it 600?
I thought it was less.
No, his is lower than that.
Okay. 600 or 900, whatever. It's not the same thing, obviously. But the thing that is annoying about this comp is how many barriers. They always have a safe place. They have a safe place moving forward. They have a safe place in the back.
They take all the space.
Right. They're taking space with physical barriers, which is rough for teams that don't have any cleave damage, like you don't have a monkey of your own, so you can't go through the barriers, or teams that have healers that can't heal through barriers, that are low mobility, that they can just kind of get right on top of, teams that don't have great positioning or can't burst the barriers fast enough. Like all those things, barriers are good for. So you need to at the rank that I play at, I stress to my team as a main tank over and over and over. Well, sometimes off tank. It's about half and half, whatever. That as soon as a monkey bubble comes down, like you gotta focus it, because people at that rank are abusing it for its maximum value. That bubble's cutting off your Ana healing. It's the monkey's dancing around it. He's not gonna die while that thing's up. We cannot focus a single target until this thing's down. People are trying to go through it instead of shoot it, and it's like, no, just shoot the thing, burst it as fast as possible. It's getting so much value for them. Please just destroy it. And so it's definitely something that you guys want to think about when you're playing as a team, is that bubble could be doing a lot more than just protecting the people inside of it. It could be actively hurting your team by cutting off healing or cutting off damage that's needed for your team to survive in the space that it's in. The Orisa barrier is obviously not as much of a problem because it's generally going to be away from you guys. It's strictly used protectively for the most part for their team. It's not going to be used defensively to cut off your healing or to separate and isolate your team. Though it would be really cool. I've never seen it done if an Orisa launched her shield like next to your Ana to cut off her healing. That'd be pretty cool if it worked out. But it's less of an issue, I guess, generally. The monkey bubble, even though it's lower health, generally gets different kinds of value that can be kind of harder to conceptualize. So it's very important most of the time to either just get out of the bubble so you can receive healing, and if you need to deal with threats that are inside of it, or if it's kind of on your team, to just destroy it as quickly as possible. So I as a target caller, when I target call and monkey jumps in and uses a bubble, I call the bubble. Like I stop calling character targets and I'm just like bubble, 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 to destroy the bubble as fast as possible.
Oh, okay.
I don't know how much he actually uses it to isolate you guys, but good monkeys can be very good. And his kit isn't complicated, monkeys, he's got his zap, he's got his jump, he's got his bubble. That's basically it. But those abilities are very powerful, especially the bubble. So it's just something to be aware of, that bubble may be getting more value than you're realizing. So it's good to take it out early.
They also had we had a hard time dealing with any range at all.
So that's another thing, is that what do you guys have for your DPS in this instance? Is it
garbage?
Looks like a McCree and a soldier.
Garbaggio.
So your damage isn't low. And it's not necessarily wrong for your whole team to peel back here and kill the monkey. It's just that you need to be aware that the whole time you're doing that, their team is advancing on you.
Yeah.
Or they should be, which they have done properly. And at least one of their damage dealers is hit scan. I know their Ana can't heal through shields. Who was their other damage dealer besides soldier?
Oh, it was McCree.
Okay, so they have the same DPS as you guys do. They just have an Orisa to really plug at your shields. So.
Well, they had a soldier and a Genji and a.
Okay, yeah, it's a Genji.
Okay, I thought you were referring to our DPS.
No.
Okay. Sorry.
Okay. So one thing to do with the monkey, and again, it's kind of just getting this, I don't know, inherent sense for like how many people are needed to deal with a problem, or whether you just want to go ahead and overkill it and like reposition. So like one thing to do that you guys did do is just have everyone fall back to point and focus the monkey and kill him. If you guys had a diva, then she could fly down and solo contest the monkey and probably just kill him by herself. I'm a big fan of diva, obviously. When you guys do fall back, probably as Reinhardt, it's important to acknowledge that you can add a little bit of extra damage on the monkey but it'd probably be more important to block their Orisa and their Soldier and their Zen and with the remaining shield that you have left. Because your shield is going to isolate the monkey's major source of healing, which is going to be the only way that he's going to survive in that instance. Being able to shield your team from the soldier damage as they're advancing on you is their major source of damage in this instance, and it's really going to be the major thing that kills any of your teammates. And the Orisa has obviously got a lot of damage. So when you guys do rotate back as a group to the point, it would be good if, as Reinhardt, you dropped down there, but instead of focusing on the monkey, you just turned your shield around to their team to give your team the space that it needs to operate on this monkey.
I think I had that idea too late, but by the time I put up my shield, it was really low.
Right.
So I probably needed to just fuck the points, like let it go and go into the room, right? Like take the security. I mean, honestly, like I push out here because I'm like, fuck, she's gonna take this spot and she's gonna start contesting, and that feels bad.
Yeah.
Right. And I had most of my health. I thought like, how bad could it really be? And then it was fucking awful. 'Cause they bursted me down so fast.
Yeah, it's pretty quick.
Yeah, we calculated it was literally 1.5 seconds. She went from full health to 0.
Yeah. The monkey is the only one that can deal damage through shields, and you're getting the bane or the boon, however you want to look at it, just because it's your perspective of more points or criticisms or whatever you want to call it. And that you still had 1,000 left on your shield, so maybe you couldn't have died. It's probably irrelevant at this point because most of your team is dead at this point anyway.
Yeah.
But I mean, like being able to block their Ana and their Zen and their Soldier.
Yeah.
And their Orisa is a lot of value.
Yeah.
Technically, on a numbers perspective, could have blocked 1,200 more damage probably before you died. But I don't remember how many picks came through before that even. It was probably just a good idea to deal as much damage and gain ult charge as possible before you die.
Yeah, I'm not gonna defend what I did.
No.
This was bad.
No one is perfect, obviously. So.
But I didn't even notice that I still had all that fucking shield, so good observation because I missed that.
It's tough to know, honestly. It's such a tiny little bar, and the only other indicator are these little cracks that you get in your shield.
That's usually what I look for, honestly. Like, I notice the cracks. The cracks freak me out, and then I look, because it's just it's like one thing,
Mm-hmm. I have been working on my Ryan play a lot lately, just being part of a team and trying to min-max those things, and I found myself, that's the only reason to bring it up, is that I don't use my shield to its full effect. I die with like half a shield remaining. It's like I probably could have used that a lot better and prevented a lot more damage with it before it actually broke.
Cool, yeah, because it gets to 400 and you're like, fuck, it's 400 damage is less than a second's worth of focus.
Mm-hmm.
And so it feels like it's practically gone.
I'm just glad that I played perfectly and contributed not at all to any of these losses.
So, I'm taking a little nap out here. This isn't specific to this particular thing. It looks like, you still have a workable number of people left alive on this point. Something that your soldier is doing really well here is kind of I don't know, you probably didn't actively think about this, but all of their damage is hit scan, except for their Genji and their Monkey for the most part. Well, not hit scan, I should say it's linear. Like Orisa is linear, and Zenyatta is linear. It's all LOS based for the most part. So being able to hide in the interior here is very good. Like if you can't see them, then they're not going to kill you for the most part unless they pull you out. And so as a fellow LOS character like Soldier, you really want to abuse sightlines, and the ideal scenario is that you should only be able to see the character you want to kill actively because that means that you're exposing yourself to the fewest number of threats. So if there was a monkey out here, or if there were a Genji out here, this positioning for the situation that you're in would be absolutely perfect. You aren't exposing yourself to the threats that are present outside, and you're doing your job by alleviating pressure or putting damage, potentially killing whoever is actively threatening your team. So that's another example of the risk that you're taking with this position is relatively low. The value that you're theoretically getting by putting pressure onto this lane is potentially very high. So low risk, high reward, super good in this instance. And your
And
Mercy
then
is...
watch me lose my brain cells.
Oh, do you? Oh, that is not good.
Yeah, I panicked.
Okay, yeah. And, obviously they have a soldier, they have a Zenyatta, shield, kill anybody anyway. Maybe stalling the point is what you want to go for after your Zarya dies. Another thing that you guys should be thinking about as a team is that when you think the fight is lost, you have a few options. You can die on the point to stall out progress. So that's a cart or just a point if it's a capture point or King of the Hill. This is a really important option if it's a payload map. If you are losing the fight, you just want to go to the point and you want to die on the point. Because if you try retreating and you don't have enough speed or you don't think you'll be able to get away, the enemy team is just going to chase you down and they're going to get free ult charge and you're not going to have slowed the payload at all. So when you think you've lost a fight, if you don't think you can get out, like 95% sure you can get out, you just want to walk straight at the cart and just die on it to stall it out before you actually die, getting some value out of your life. Another
that
option.
whole process confuses the shit out of me because like I went from being like, hey man, don't go out there because you're just gonna fucking die, and I got yelled at about that. And then I was like, alright, I'm gonna stall this fucking cart and I'm gonna die on it, and then being like, I got yelled at because it was like, no, now you're giving them fucking ult charge. And I'm just like, I feel like it's so contextual that I'm like, I just give up. I'm like, I don't know what the fuck to do anymore. Like,
well, that's the thing is that, it's like a filter for the most part. The first thought should be like, is this fight over? If the answer is yes, then the second thought should be, can I get away and regroup with my team? If you're pretty sure that's yes, go ahead and get away and get a faster regroup so that you don't stagger yourself. If you're pretty sure it's no, then the next thought should be, I should just go to cart. Because if you can't get away, you're going to give them that ult charge no matter what. If you're running away and trying to get back to your team and they catch you right before you get there, you're going to get staggered even more than if you just walked into their team. And you wouldn't have stopped the cart at all. So it's just more value if you don't think you can get away to just go to the cart and at least stall the payload, because you're going to give them that ult charge no matter what, and you're going to die faster, which means you're going to be able to regroup with your team faster. If that makes sense. And
yeah.
I'm aware that not everyone, especially on the ladder, all the randos out there with their terrible game sense and their ideologies, is aware of kind of that thought process, and so they're going to yell at you, be like, oh, you're cheating, or blah. Just ignore them, obviously. Just have confidence that you've at least thought about it and you made a decision, and that's half the battle in this game, is at least making a decision, and you can think about later whether it was right or wrong to improve your own gameplay. But it's important in the middle of a game where things are fast-paced to at least make a decision, because you don't want to be indecisive.
Got it.
That's what VOD reviews and post-game reflection are for. So in this instance, when you think you've lost a fight, which I would say you guys have lost this fight, another option you have, which barriers are this option's greatest enemy, is before you die, the maximum value option is to stall the point out and get some ult charge before you die, because you're going to die no matter what. Soldier's probably not getting away in this instance. I guess you could make a beeline straight down the staircase if you thought you could get away. That's another option. But in this instance, you should probably just try to run through the interior, get behind the shield, blast somebody with a Helix rocket. Maybe you get a trade and a pick. It's probably not going to mean much here, but the more important thing is that you're going to get probably 20% of your ult before you die, instead of kind of awkwardly dancing out here, and then they get ult charge from killing you, which they were going to get anyway, but you got nothing in return. So you just want to kind of extract the last value out of your life, because you being alive is a resource that you can use in this game. We talked about, just before this, you can use that to stall a cart. Your presence itself is something that you can use, and just being alive means you could be getting ult charge. If you're going to die anyway, you might as well get that ult charge. And then another value is getting a quicker death that way so that you get a faster respawn. So, a common thing at the rank that I play at is people are just like, just int. And I didn't know what it meant. I had to look it up. I guess it's a League of Legends thing or something like that. Intentionally kill yourself.
Yeah.
Where you just run into the enemy team. And it's a legitimate strategy because you want to respawn as fast as possible. The faster you guys are grouped up as 6, the faster you can safely move as a unit across the map. Especially if an enemy team is chasing you kind of all the way to your spawn. You don't even want to leave spawn until you guys are fully stacked up. And being able to die relatively close together means that you will have more opportunities to take an attack or to take a defense. And that's really all this game is. This game is measured in team fights for the most part. There are very few instances where you'll be able to, carry your whole team. You'll go in 2v6 and you'll ult and you'll kill them all and you're like, yay, and everybody's like, you're awesome. But for the most part, that's probably not going to be the case.
Yeah, that's something that we've always had a problem with, is going in with less than 6. So we're always like leaving somebody behind, and then we're 5v6ing the enemy team. Like, this is going to work for us.
Yeah. Obviously, 5v6 puts you at a disadvantage. Every decision that you make kind of in Overwatch should be trying to play the probabilities. So if you're like, if we win in 5v6, we have a 30% chance to win this fight. If we're going 6v6, then we've got a 55% chance to win this fight because of our ults that we have. Might as well wait, 4 extra seconds to get 25% chance more likelihood that we're going to win this fight. Seems like a good idea.
Yeah.
5v6 isn't impossible, especially because ults are in this game. If you're down one character, it obviously depends on who that character is, but being down one character, just as a general rule of thumb to make it easier to think about, doesn't make a situation losable or unwinnable, I should say. If you're down 5v6, it's still probably a good idea to try to use ultimates that you've planned and sequenced together to try to retake the advantage. Like, that's an okay disadvantage to try to come back from. It's when you're down 2, so if it's like 4v6 or if it's 2v4 or 3v5, whatever, being down 2 is about the point where statistically you're probably not going to come back from it. But that is not to say that it is impossible. There are some character combinations, like your Brig is alive and your Zarya is super high charge and alive and she has grab or something and their healer's dead. Like, that is a situation that you could recognize as like, this is winnable. Even 2v5, this is winnable. We're going to go ahead and go for it. But obviously that's very situation dependent. So sometimes it's easier to break it down into like smaller heuristics of just like, if you're down 2, probably save. If you're down 1, keep focusing on what you're doing because it's still winnable. Oh, sorry. I ruined all your hard work.
It's okay.
Oh, so it's you.
The idea of probabilities, though, is legit the hardest thing for me to do while I'm multitasking and thinking in game.
And it's not, at least me, maybe there are people out there, it's not something you like actively visualize in your head. It's kind of something that you ingrain into your play as you play. You've played the game, you've gotten thousands of kills, you played thousands of matches, you've died thousands of times, and you're like, oh, this generally worked out. This generally didn't. And you kind of you develop a sense for those probabilities as you kind of develop as an Overwatch player.
Abandoning healers doesn't work.
Generally. Yeah.
Not using all of my shield doesn't work.
Oh no.
You always want to play to your advantages and abuse your advantages while trying to mitigate disadvantages, which, is a very generic way to say, like, play good.
Get good.
Oh no.
Scrub.
Forehead.
Good.
See, when you punch numbers into that calculator, that's what comes out.
Yeah.
Oh my
good.
god. I really want to get Chill a calculator that actually does that. I'm gonna put the other one in like Raspberry Pi or something and send it to her.
It's just 2 plus 2
Whenever you-
equals get good.
Get good.
Yeah.
5 plus 9, 7 times
Get good.
10.
Get good.
Get good.
Please, I just want to add something.
Mhm.
Get good.
Holy shit.
Here, let me control this really quick. Let's see.
We really need 2 additional players.
I thought that looping around to the left, how descriptive you were and what you were doing was good when I watched this today. This is very, very good.
Yeah,
So
right?
you call where you're going. Your far player, which is not your rando in this case, which makes it even more rewarding, knows that this is the win condition that you guys are trying to establish. The rest of your team is lagging behind a little bit. They should probably be in here by now. That's okay. Monkey's really fast. He jumps really fast. Whatever. So they'll catch up. But your Farah knew what was up, what the beef was.
Best Farah.
She's already there, which is great. And you called out where you're going, who you're going to go on. I wouldn't necessarily call Reinhardt squishy. I think you called you're going on the squishies. Soldier squishy. Anyway, the fact that you called that you're going left, you're jumping on them. They both are like, oh, look, a soldier or a monkey to shoot at. Reinhardt's like, oh, look, a monkey. You've bought your Farah space. She's capitalized on this half second of space that you've given her from soldier-free airspace and come in with a barrage. Boom. Soldier gets wiped out first because he had poor positioning. I don't think they have another hit scan in this instance, which means this fight should probably be won because there's no one left to contest your Farah. So this particular win condition establishment and execution for this point was very good.
Yeah, Hanzo was their other DPS.
Yeah.
And then I killed his ass too!
Right. So that's another instance of kind of identifying a DPS as your
Well, can we
lose
back up?
condition.
Can we back?
Yeah,
What
sure.
the fuck was the hog running after? The hog just abandons point. So bomb goes off. Okay, I understand why the hog's over there. It doesn't want to die, and then continues to run away.
He's chasing your
Oh.
Lucio.
No, he was dancing with us, yeah.
Ah,
Okay.
He probably just tunnel visioned and didn't realize the point was supposed to be capped. Not
He
that he
was-
could have done anything anyway, because I booped him when he tried to jump onto the point at the end.
Yeah.
I still had my concussion blast off cooldown, which is surprising because I normally use it to get in position for barrage.
He was playing the classic I win when stuff dies mentality.
Mhm.
He's trying to kill your Lucio. That'll gain us an advantage, which in most instances is right, but you never want to lose sight of what you're trying to do, which is protect an objective, obviously. There are multiple ways.
Sometimes when I have to abandon Ellie, and she's like, "This guy back here, he's killing me," and I'm like, "Yeah, but they're not touching the cart, so." It's like,
Fuck you.
A
Like,
worthy
I-
sacrifice.
I can sacrifice the main healer.
Yeah.
I mean, you probably don't want to let her die, but yeah, if they're
Yeah.
not contesting cart and they're not a threat, then leave them there until their team returns and then stagger them out with their poor positioning is probably the best way to handle that.
Yeah, you got a sleep dart. You're fine.
You know what? No healing for you.
I mean, that just goes back to risk versus reward. Like the risk of losing your main healer is a very large one. The reward of
Hear that?
leaving that person and potentially staggering them is probably minimal, but
I tilted her.
high risk, mediocre reward, whatever.
I
But
think after
The point-
today, I never ever want to see this Anubis video ever again. It's like,
Right.
it's like if we had actually lost this game, I would have felt like this was the height of self-flagellation. Look at me not using my ice wall there. This is like a pro May play here.
I think I need to sync this. Okay, perfect.
Oh, weird. It skipped ahead.
It
Anyway,
did, yeah.
just while we're on the topic or what I brought up of, kills aren't always the way to win. They're not always your win condition. Sometimes just establishing better positioning or pressuring out key characters, like if they have a Pharah or a Widow, you don't necessarily need to kill the Pharah or Widow. You just whoever's job it is needs to make sure that they're zoned out or pressured out during the fight so that, the rest of their team dies before they even have a chance to be effective in the fight. So sometimes just pressuring people out is a good enough win condition. It doesn't always have to be a kill, especially as hit scan. It's generally better to kind of just stay with your team, make sure the fire can't get close, zone her out. You definitely don't want to put yourself out of position to go try to kill her. And same thing with Widow. You don't want to peek your sight lines. You don't want to chase the Widow as Monkey or Diva and like walk into the enemy team. You just want to make sure that you're ready to do your job in the 1 or 2 seconds that the fight's going to happen, and that you can zone that character out and do your job, because it is your job in that instance, if that's something you're thinking about. And that is your win condition. You don't necessarily have to kill a Widow, don't necessarily have to kill a Pharah. Zoning is good enough sometimes. Superior positioning is good enough sometimes. Like, you can just, especially when an enemy team is good enough to recognize when they're at a disadvantage, you can take control of points and hold points, and people will go, oh, well, C9. But just putting enough pressure on a point so that the enemy team knows that they can't advance, and they panic and they don't communicate who's going to touch, is enough to win a point. I look at those losses when a team like moves off the point because they recognize they're at a disadvantage as better than if they just walked in and died because they knew they were at a disadvantage. But obviously there was the one tiny shortcoming of they didn't communicate who was going to touch, and people like, oh, you're the worst, you C9'd. But to me, it seems smarter to be like, oh, we're not going to win this the way that we are right now. We should probably back off. Whatever. The main point being that just pressure alone, zoning alone, knowing what your job is and executing it alone, not necessarily getting picks, can win you games or win you fights. That's the point. That obviously applies to a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
It's pretty big. But one thing I want to point out too, Pharah Mercy, especially Pharah, if they come in within hook range, since I just saw it, if they come in within hook range, it's actually a lot easier than you would expect to get a ball and chain combo on a Pharah or a Pharah Mercy. Like, if they're within hook range, they're killable. Like, that orb could very well kill one of them, because the Pharah flies up and Mercy like lags behind. If you just like launched it roughly between the Pharah and the Mercy, even if the Pharah boosts her concussive blasts to get away, the Mercy's probably stuck back, and then the orb is just going to pull them in, free hook, boom, they're dead.
Yeah, I feel like my orbs in this match were less than stellar. I just either wasn't using them, or the ones that I did use didn't, for the most part, didn't really land where I expected them to. So, just need more practice there.
Yep. And there's a lot to think about in Overwatch. We could have conversations maybe all day about specific key abilities. Like shield placement would be like a full day conversation probably. The 4 factors that you have to think about. I've said in the beginning of this, like, everything in Overwatch is pretty much the basics. Like, the game is fast paced and there's a lot of stuff in it, but at the end of the day, like, they're just characters. They only have a few abilities. It's just how you use those abilities and kind of the meta knowledge of when to use those abilities that really makes the difference between bad players and good players. And so with each ability, if you're thinking about the 4 things of like, where is my team positioned? Where is their team positioned? What characters do I have on my team? What characters do they have on their team? All of those things go into, what makes a good ability use and what makes a bad ability use. And it is not basic at all, even though it is the basics. The abilities themselves are obviously very finite. They don't really change a lot. There's not like an option to modify an ability. They're very static, if you will. It's just you can use them in 3D space at different times, which makes it very, very complex, given how many characters there are on your team and their team, possibly, like how many different combinations, and how many places they all could be. And, obviously that variability is what makes the game interesting, but it is also what makes ability usage hard to digest, hard to break down, hard to decide if it's like a good use or a bad use. It makes positioning difficult of like, here's what they're running, here's what we're running, like where's the proper place to position? Because one answer is not always the right answer. Obviously, if compositions change or just general positioning changes, there are general rules to follow. Obviously, like for the most part, if we're running an Orisa comp, this would be a good place to hold. But that's not always true, because for the most part, there will be a counter composition that would make that place a bad place to hold. So it's just really thinking about things probabilistically and dynamically and trying to keep your brain juices flowing and your communication flowing so that if you notice something, you let your team know so that you guys can react kind of dynamically and responsively, because it's at the end of the day, that's what makes teams good. It's what makes compositions good. Playing against higher ranks, your compositions will have to change so that you have more options of what you can do available to you, so that you can to make changes on the fly and play style, because you don't know what you'll be running into. So you want to be ready for anything. A well-rounded composition is going to give you the highest percentage of succeeding. But there are also cheese comps, which don't work at the professional level, obviously, because they don't have those options available to them. So like hard bunker strategy doesn't work on a lot of maps, even though it might work in Platinum or Diamond or even Masters or GM. It doesn't work in Owl because they're like, oh, we know, like we'll just change our play style because our composition is actually versatile, whereas their one condition is exactly that, only one win condition, and we know what that is immediately, and we can abuse that.
So what you're saying is we shouldn't feel bad when we fuck it up.
Absolutely not. I mean, you're gonna keep playing the game. You have every opportunity to try to do better next time. There's no reason to dwell on it, especially in the moment, because it's only gonna affect your play during that game. Like you want to be at maximum performance, obviously, in the middle of a game. You want to make sure that you're high energy, that you keep talking, so that you can play dynamically as a group. And then after, you can dwell on it. Like after the fact, you'd be like, "Dang, I could have done that better." And it's like, "All right, well, try to do it better after that." But that's all you can do, you know. Even if the enemy team is like, "Oh, you're trash, C9 lol," it's like, well, next time we'll talk about who's gonna get on the point. That's fine. And then, you know, even if it doesn't happen next time, you can always be like, "Well, we did it again. Whoops. Next time we're definitely gonna do that." If as long as you have that mentality and you're really focused on improvement, no one in this room is the best Overwatch player in the world, not even by a long shot. We're all here to just play the game and have fun and improve. And if you aren't having fun as a team, if you're not focused on improvement, then you're going to find much less enjoyment in the game overall. And fun is the greatest motivator to improve. It's what's going to keep you in the game, in your community in the long run, keep you interested, because fun is going to drive the desire to improve. And so that's the number one priority. You don't want to lose that, because it is really the catalyst for improvement is fun at the end of the day, as cheesy as that sounds. So yeah, just don't dwell on stuff, because you can always get better. As long as you keep playing the game, you can always try again next time.
Thank you for the pep talk.
Yeah.
Thank you. It was really useful because we always like dwell on it.
I mean, it's easy to do, especially with how toxic the community is, when they're just like, "Hey, you're garbage." It's like, well, you're in gold too, buddy. But
read the room.
But it doesn't matter at the end of the day. Like, you shouldn't really be playing for wins, because the game is designed to always match you with like a fair match. Like, if the game was working as it's designed, you're always going to have roughly a 50% win rate. That's just the way that it is. As you get better, you're going to be paired against better people. The strategies that you employ and the things that work may not work anymore. You're always going to have a problem in front of you. It's never going to be easy. So you just have to enjoy the process of analyzing things and trying to get better yourself, because you're never, unless you do become the best Overwatch player in the world, you're never going to get to the point, unless you're smurfing or on an account where it doesn't know how good you are, that you're like, oh, this is easy. Like, this is a cakewalk. It's just not going to happen. So that shouldn't be the goal, and getting wins shouldn't be the goal, but improving should be the goal. And having fun is a great way to improve in the long run.
I agree.
You know, that's yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah,
yeah.
I think sometimes we forget to not take everything so like super seriously. I
Right.
don't mean that we don't care about the game, but like we're gonna lose eventually, and
Yeah. I mean, if things are going
it's
well, you're gonna
okay.
lose about half the time.
Oh,
If
okay.
well, I mean, that's just the way it works. 50%. You know, if your opponents were always as good as you, you'd win about half. Like losing about half the time would be expected. If you're not losing about half the time and you still want to focus on improvement, then you should probably find different opponents to play against. Like
Mm.
ideally, you would be losing about half the time that it was a good match.
Oh.
If you
Yeah, I
played,
feel like if you just had a positive win ratio, eventually you would just wind up in top 500 slash pro Overwatch League.
Yeah.
Like,
Can't be
that shit,
beat.
that shit would eventually sort itself out. I feel.
yeah, and that's great if that happens, and if you get good enough to do that. But I mean, the reality is that's probably not going to be the case, and so you might as well have fun while you're here. And half the time that you're playing this game, you're going to be losing, so you might as well enjoy that 50% of that time. It's like find a way to enjoy yourself at work, IRL, because you're going to spend a third of your life there, 8 hours a day. You might as well have fun doing it, even if
Well,
it's
yeah.
not fun in quotes. Same thing with losing. Like losing isn't fun in quotes, but there are ways to not be down about it, I guess. Change your mentality about it.
I'll buy alcohol and play.
Look, I'm just stalling for time until Overwatch 2 comes out, so.
That's fair.
So you can play your PvE matches.
Mm-hmm.
And also,
Honestly, like, I just like playing with a team.
E is the realest shit.
Look, I just want to play with a fucking team. It's not my fault that Overwatch only has PvP. Like, I like PvP okay, but like, if it was like, what do you call it? It was more like Battleborn or something like that, I would do that.
Yeah.
oh, and also Overwatch is a lot about grinding, and in order to climb ranks, we need to grind a lot more.
So yeah, solo queue obviously is a group. This doesn't change a lot. The way that my team has a particular problem with morale and like losing and playing for the right things, which is why I even have like a monologue in my back pocket about it.
Wow. Okay. Perfect.
But if
That's a real thing.
if you're solo queuing the ladder, then I would expect there to be 2 games of 10, so like 2 out of 10 games where you as one player on your team could really make the difference reasonably. There's probably 2 extra games where, if you carried really hard, you could make the difference. And then the rest of the 10 games, so like of the 10 games, there's probably 3 that you're definitely going to lose no matter how well you do because your team just won't coordinate, or like the enemy team will just be better. Matchmaking's not perfect. And then there'll be, on the same token, there should be about 3 games where, even if you don't play your best, you're probably going to win them because your team is better than their team. That's just how it's going to be. Like you're only 1 out of 6 people on your team. So you should have about 3 games that are quote unquote unwinnable and 3 that are unlosable, quote unquote. And then there will be about 1 game where, if you really threw, you'd probably lose, but you'll probably win if you play okay. And there will be 1 game on the other side where if you played really, really well and carried really hard, you could probably win that one. But if you're not playing out of your mind, you're probably going to lose. And then there's the 2 that remain kind of in the middle, because that's 4 on each side, that are like just very small differences are going to make the difference in these 2 games. Like if you play just a little above average and you land like 1 key ability, you're going to win that one. Like that was a close game. That's cool. And then the same thing could happen on the opposite side of like, oh, I flubbed this 1 fight and that cost us the game. Rip. But that's realistically probably going to be only 2 of those games. And so climbing kind of manifests itself in solo queue as winning 6 out of 10. Like you probably won't really win more than 60% of your matches. Like a 60% win rate's really good. So winning 6 out of 10 means that you're still going to lose 4. And the climbing just doesn't really ever feel very good because you're still losing almost half of them. But that's what climbing is. It's just winning 6 out of 10. Just winning that 1 game that could have been flipped either way.
I feel like we've been doing that over the course of 2 days, playing 3 or 4 games a day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you guys have more autonomy, obviously, but so does the enemy team because you
Yeah.
play in stacks. It tries to pair stacks with stacks.
Yeah.
So the kind of thought process or the analysis of that breaks down quite a bit because it's not as random, but it's just a good thing to think about the ladder realistically, and that it's not going to be a W machine because it's not designed to be that way.
It's most definitely not a W machine in Diamond because, oh boy, that's where like every other factor that goes into ladder also enters, and you're like, holy fuck, dude.
Yeah.
Like, fucking Decay, you've got fucking people smurfing because Diamond's the easiest place for people to maintain most of the time.
Yep.
You've got fucking, like, people who've been boosted. You've got people who haven't picked up the game in, like,
the Decay.
months. Well, it's like not only just like general Decay, but also just like some people just haven't played in a long time, and they maybe be like former masters or GM or even like Diamond still, and then they just like get put right back in Diamond right there because that's like the middle ground of everywhere.
It's so crazy to think of Diamond as the middle ground, and I'm just
What's
like the gross dirt at the bottom of the fucking barrel.
Well, it's technically the top 10% of the player base. Last I checked,
it is. It's the middle ground for that 10% though, right?
Yeah.
It's like think about it more as like not the general, like player pool, right? Because that's mostly in like gold, platinum. But it's like all the people who are above that, it's more likely than not, at one point, they either are Diamond, have been Diamond, or are currently playing in Diamond on another account. And so that's where you get, it's basically like, I actually have a friend who is like a Hammond main from like, I think Australia, and he's like, man, this is so hard to climb. And it's like, yeah, it's really hard to climb because it's a Diamond, because you're getting matched with people who, it's a mixture of people who are smurfing, people who are dueling with smurfs, people who are like hard throwing just to get lower from a higher rank, or like just like, and then like actual people
and hackers
play at a Diamond level, right? And then it's like there's such a huge skill gap between like all of those factors there, where, and like every game in solo queue especially is so fucking random, where it's just like you have to kind of pray, or like basically, well, it's like, it's essentially what I always say, it's like if you have to like play above your skill level, right, to like get out of your current skill range, right? But with Diamond, you kind of have to focus like a lot on maintaining yourself and what you could possibly do, rather than like instead of like getting a
I'm losing you
as a person.
She's becoming a robot.
Okay. So more along the lines of like, what can I do as a person to learn mechanics above a Diamond level, to possibly even bypass that in a sense, right? To just be like, okay, like, it's not worth it to go from, like, okay, I'm in Platinum, I have to, like, learn how to aim vaguely. Now it's like, okay, I have to go thinking about, like, game sense, and I have to do all these things. And obviously, like, you don't have to do it in, like, a fucking night, or like however long it's like as long as it takes you, right? But it's like as long as you realize that the goal isn't to be like, okay, I have to play at a Diamond level to be able to play within Diamond. It's more along the lines of like, okay, so I have to recognize that with all the randomness and everything, to maximize chances, it's more like you have to be even like above that and like looking at higher play than that, just to kind of even get the feel of what Diamond games might be like, because Diamond games are just so fucking random.
Yeah. The Decay and the smurfing and just the general shit zone the Diamond is just increases the disparity and the randomness it reduces the autonomy that any individual person has over their experience in that game, because it's like, maybe you get the really good Smurf, maybe they get the really good Smurf, maybe you get the shit person that shouldn't be in Diamond because they got boosted up here, or maybe they do. It's like, who knows? It's a coin toss. So you, to Chill's point, you really have to focus on yourself, because you never know what you're gonna get.
That just sounds like ladder, because like,
Well,
I'm in silver bronze. Like, I randomly am gonna get someone who's high. I'm gonna get somebody who's drunk or who's been in fucking gold since season 1 and never fucking gone up or down.
It is true in ladder. It's just that in Diamond, because of the decay system specifically, the disparity between all of your teammates and their potential skill levels, and this is probably true of bronze because people throw to get down there in the first place too.
Exactly.
But the disparity is ridiculous. Like a Diamond player and a GM player.
That's just gonna be a problem that I face when I fucking get there. I'm not even in plat yet, so.
Well, okay, so like, just think about, like, you can take examples from this, right? Because think about it less like, okay, like, all these fucking people in Diamond, like, have to deal with, like, GMs and whatever. Like, think about it more along the terms of, you don't have as much of an excuse on, like, blaming other people. So it's like, oh, you have, like, there's obviously, like, the 5 games that you played, your Smurfs on the other team. Like, I know you guys aren't, like, that narcissistic where it's like another person.
But no, that's just the math anyway. Like, the whole deal is, like, everybody has an equally likely chance of getting good people and bad people, regardless of what rank you're at. It's like, yeah, the disparity may be larger in Diamond, but is still a uniform distribution. Like, you personally are not gonna have, like, a bigger swing of people than the other person on your team. Like,
well,
you know?
It's more along the lines of, so, like, in Diamond, right, it's a different environment just because of that large disparity, whereas in Gold and Platinum, like, it's very unlikely where if you actually, like, it's, like, think about it more in terms of, like, if you're at, like, a 2.3k level, you don't have to be at, like, a 2.8k level or above to actually be able to climb. You just have to be playing consistently, like, okay, I'm at 2.3, now I have to learn how to play at 2.4, 2.5. Like, it can be a steadier climb where you're like, all right, I'm, like, taking individual things because at different, like, even within, like, every 5th of, like, the skill range, right, of, like, each skill rank is, like, completely different. Like, a 2.9 game is completely different from, like a 2.5 game, right? Even though they're technically the same skill rank, right?
Okay,
and
yeah.
So it's more along the lines of, like, when you're at, like, that gold, platinum level, or even below, until, like, you hit bronze, because bronze is, like, there's so many different factors in there as well. It's more along the lines of how you can structure yourself in a way where you're still improving while also recognizing that it's, like, not an outside influence of, like, obviously, like, the matchmaking system is bad, or it's, like, it's a general rule that across all ranks that, like, you're gonna get, like, a Smurf in, like, gold or platinum or whatever. It's more like, because of, like, the higher amount of, like, player base and everything, like, you're more likely to get games faster, quicker, and just in general, like, honestly more even, because there's just a wide variety of people there. And with that, you actually gain an advantage of going against multiple different, like, a lot of different people, because you're getting a lot of different experiences. And so if you actually, like, stop and take those experiences of, like, going against a bunch of different people, whether or not they're, like, Smurfs or not, like, you can have someone who's playing at your rank and you're like, holy shit, like, this guy's insane. But, like, sometimes people just have really good games too, right? And so just, like, recognizing that it's not, like, a whole, like, suddenly I have to be, like, playing at a diamond level to beat this gold game. It's more like, yeah, I can, like, get more of those consistent matches where Trey was basically like, yeah, it's, like, more of a small, like, thing, right? It's not just, like, you're going to be absolutely trash because, like, maybe their team's just better because they have a Smurf, or they're just better in general, right? It's just, like, more of those games actually, like, if you actually would go through, like, the numbers of playing, like, 100 games or whatever, you'll find that more of those games actually do pop up just because of how, like, gold as a system and, like, platinum and stuff with the MMR, like, it works, right?
I think I get it. I think.
Okay.
I mean, I feel like people have different expectations at these different ranks, and so I wrote on the screen like there's no empirical data one way or another, because I think what we're talking about is a general feeling that is actually felt uniformly across all ranks, but for different reasons, and kind of according to different expectations people have about each other at those ranks. And I think at Diamond there is this more widely accepted expectation that you're supposed to be able to win games more than 50% of the time. So there's less of an excuse for any of the bullshit that you see there. But in gold, that the expectation is that half of your team is drunk or high, or dumb, right?
Yeah.
Or just like inexperienced, right? And so that kind of frustration just kind of manifests in a different way.
Okay. Oh, okay. I
Yeah.
understand.
Like, I would definitely say, when you think about climbing, like, honestly, when I was climbing from, like, high gold into diamond, like, that one season, it was basically, like, what I did was I took, like, little steps, right? So I'm not thinking, like, okay, by the end of this season, I'm gonna be diamond. It was more like, okay, like, by the end of this week, I'm gonna try to be positive in SR from where I started in the week. So, like, whether that was, like, +2, +10, +100, like, that didn't matter. The main point was that any single, like, goal that I tried to make was trying to be working towards my ultimate goal of, like, hitting that higher rank, right? And just, like, if you're getting, like, +2 SR, like, every single week or whatever, yeah, that's slow as fuck. And, like, you should probably go and look over some things that maybe you can get a feel for. But also think about it, like, it might have been, like, a really shitty time, and you might have put a lot of effort into it, and you're like, wow, 2 SR is, like, really bad. But, like, think about it in the way of, like, you could have ended exactly where you were before. You could have actually been down, like, -200 from where you were. So, like, obviously what you're doing is working, and you just have to find ways to make it work even better, right? So you can kind of take that as, like, an indicator of, like, all right, if I'm losing, like, -300 SR, is it because of how you're playing? Is it because it was a bad day? Is it because, like, sometimes, like, when you lose a bunch, it's like after a point, like, even in solo queue, it's just like, are you queuing for just the sake of queuing anymore? Are you queuing to actually attempt to get better at the game, right? And there's, like, a point where everyone reaches if they have, like, a loss streak where it's like, okay, you need to just stop and just be, like, thinking about what you have done that day, whether or not it was like, I, like, hard through. Because, like, trust me, there's been many games where I'm like, fuck, I just threw that game without even meaning to, right? And it's just, like, recognizing that stuff and being like, all right, we're gonna, like, take a fucking break, and we're gonna, like, come back with this with, like, a fresh pair of eyes, and we're not gonna just queue for the sake of queuing and lose, like, 300 SR. Because, like, trust me,
That's
doesn't
never
work.
good. That's never good.
So,
okay.
like,
I gotta go
small
to bed.
goals.
Yeah, go.
Okay.
Thanks, Trey.
Go to bed.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Hopefully you guys absorb something. It's a
Oh
lot.
yes, everything. I'm gonna watch this video like 7 times.
Oh yeah, we have it recorded, so.
Yeah, I'll upload it to YouTube tonight.
Yay!
All right, cool. Have a good night, guys.
Good night, Trey.
Oh wait, I gotta open this window. Bye.
Bye.
And thanks, Chill, for your insight as well. I know
Like,
you're feeling tired.
I feel it, homie. Like, I'm gonna be real here. Like,
Yes.
it's like the climb is never about the big goals. It's always about, like, the
The
tiny
small?
little ones where you're just like, holy fuck, I am,
You know?
like, if you think about it, right? If you go week by week and you're, like, up 20 SR, by the end of the actual season, you could be like, holy shit, I'm up like 200 SR from where I started. And then like having that as a positive motivator, you're like, holy shit, like I improved that much. I can keep going, like, you know? It's such a small thing. Like keeping self-motivated and self-positive and understanding like, hi, you might have limits, but like you can push past those and you can also like say fuck it. And you can do your own goddamn thing if it works for you, you know? And
Yeah.
like it's like studying, but you know, more fun. Unless you want to kill yourself.
Unless you're in graduate school.
Did you see what baby just typed?
Popped off that MP3 when
I have it still.
But like Darcy, trust me, homie. Like you're in gold now, aren't you? Like at like 2.2.
Yeah, barely.
Okay, but still think about it. Like, where the fuck were you? I remember at one point, like a month ago, where you told me you were at like 1.6.
Yeah. So the deal is that we actually played the game. Like the issue was not that we're having problems in comp and that we're losing SR and that we're not climbing. That's not the problem we have. The problem is that we just don't have time. Like we don't have time to play, and like we don't have a full team, and like we're just trying to get this shit together. So yeah. I'm not tripping about not climbing.
I mean, that's valid. What I mean more along the terms of like, if you are having like a bad time and you're like, shit, like I just played with you guys and like we lost this game. It was like what Trey was saying. It was like, you know, like go after, like don't think about it in the moment, like go after it later. Even if it's a negative experience, there's always something you can take from a negative experience to turn it into a positive one.
Oh yeah. And also, I'm gonna try to not beat myself up so much for losing SR.
Good. You shouldn't.
You're all wonderful people, and you should never beat yourselves unless it's beating your meat.
Amen.
I don't have any meat.
Yes. 10 out of 10.
Household here.
10 out of 10. Oh my god.
These motherfuckers better endorse me. I played fucking Baptiste. And like, it's healing their ungrateful asses.
Alright, I think that concludes the topic of conversation. I'm going to stop the recording and start uploading it.
Oh, yeah.
That's good. That's good.
That's good.
I got an